The story begins on an ordinary evening, the kind of calm night when most people were busy with their usual routines. Some were getting ready for bed, others were watching shows, and many were scrolling through their phones without thinking much. Nothing seemed unusual. But far away from cities and noise, inside a quiet research center on a mountain, a small team of astronomers noticed something that made them stop what they were doing. One of them stared at the large screen showing live data from a deep space telescope. The signals coming in did not look normal. At first, the team thought it might be an error in the system, a machine glitch, maybe a satellite reflecting sunlight. But as the minutes passed, the signals grew stronger, clearer, and more organized. They showed a pattern, something intelligent and controlled. It was the kind of thing they had trained all their lives to recognize, yet never believed they would actually see. The team exchanged quiet, stunned looks. They ran checks again and again, not wanting to make a mistake. They had protocols for discoveries like this, steps that involved confirming the signal through different equipment, calling international observatories, and alerting global agencies. Every check showed the same thing. This was real. Something huge was moving toward the solar system, and it was not moving randomly. It was moving with intention. Within an hour, secret phone calls were being made to government offices, science agencies, space centers, and communication networks. People who were used to receiving calm reports suddenly found themselves staring at startling data. The numbers showed the object was enormous. Not a rock, not an asteroid, not a natural structure of any kind. It was a fleet, thousands of controlled vessels, slowing down in a way only advanced engineering could allow. For a few hours, everything was kept quiet. World leaders and advisors met privately, speaking in tense, uncertain voices. No one wanted to cause panic. No one wanted to jump to conclusions. But the truth was impossible to ignore. Something intelligent, something far more advanced than humanity, had arrived. While this silent chaos unfolded behind closed doors, ordinary people were going about their day as usual. Children were finishing homework. Workers were traveling home on late buses. Street vendors were packing up for the night. Couples were walking outside, enjoying cool evening air. No one knew that the universe had just reached out to them. That changed the moment the sky lit up. It happened without warning. A shimmering glow spread across the upper atmosphere, visible from every continent. At first, people thought it might be a meteor shower, a solar flare, maybe even a rare natural event. But then the glow formed shapes, organized shapes, almost like lines of light hovering far above. Phones came out instantly. Videos began streaming online. Social media filled with messages and confused guesses. Within minutes, global news networks interrupted their regular programs. Anchors stared into cameras, trying to stay calm as they explained that governments had detected an incoming fleet earlier in the evening. The world's population reacted with shock, fear, excitement, disbelief, and curiosity, all at once. There was no time to prepare mentally. The truth arrived too fast. As the lights grew brighter, a message appeared in the sky, not words, but a pattern. A pattern that repeated in rhythmic pulses of color, something everyone could see no matter where they were. Scientists quickly realized these were not random signals. They matched a universal sequence used in mathematics, a sequence that most intelligent species might recognize. It was a greeting, not a threat, not a warning. A simple message: we are here. The glowing lines slowly separated, revealing the faint shapes of colossal ships stationed just beyond the atmosphere. They did not enter Earth's space. They did not attempt to land. They just waited, still and silent, like respectful guests waiting to be invited inside. Down on the ground, emotions ran wild. Families gathered around televisions. Teachers turned on classroom screens. People in cafes, markets, and airports huddled together watching live broadcasts. Some were terrified, assuming the worst. Others were overcome with awe, thinking this was the most beautiful moment in human history. A few simply stood speechless, not knowing what to feel. Inside military bases around the world, commanders and advisors worked through rapid plans, but one thing they all agreed on was that the fleet did not seem hostile. Their movements were too controlled, too calm, too considerate. If they wanted to attack, they had countless opportunities. Instead, they behaved like travelers following an old tradition, announcing themselves before knocking on a door, and the message came through. Every device capable of receiving signals, televisions, radios, online platforms, satellite feeds flickered at the same moment. The interference lasted only a second. When the screens came back, a symbol appeared. A circular crest glowing softly, made of interconnected shapes, smoother and more elegant than any human design. And then a voice was heard. It was not a human voice, but it was clear and understandable. The tone was calm, deep, and steady. The message was translated automatically into every major language on Earth. The voice explained that the fleet belonged to something called the Galactic Concord, a peaceful alliance of civilizations spread across distant regions of the galaxy. Their purpose was exploration, cooperation, and knowledge sharing. Humanity, according to them, had reached a level of technological and social development that qualified the species for contact. People everywhere listened with their breath held. The voice continued, explaining that the Concord had been observing humanity from afar for many generations. Not interfering, only watching. They had seen humanity advance through ages of struggle, innovation, curiosity, and creativity. They believed that humans had potential, not just scientifically, but emotionally, an unusual blend of adaptability and imagination that made the alley. Species unique among the civilizations they had. Encountered. The message ended with a gentle statement. They wished to establish peaceful dialogue and offer a place in their interstellar alliance. If humanity was willing, the world erupted into reactions. Reporters attempted to break down the meaning of every word. Scientists tried to decode the symbols shown in the message. Religious groups offered interpretations of their own. Some people celebrated in the streets, waving flags of unity and cheering at the sky. Others prayed, unsure whether this was a blessing or a test. A few refused to believe any of it, claiming it was a global hoax or an advanced trick. While ordinary citizens were reacting emotionally, leaders of nations were reacting with caution. Within hours, they gathered for an emergency global meeting. Screens filled with faces of officials from every region of the world, all speaking anxiously about the meaning of the offer. Some believed this was humanity's greatest opportunity. Others feared hidden dangers. Some pointed out the history of human alliances, how even on Earth, powerful groups often controlled weaker ones. If that was true among humans, what would happen with civilizations thousands of years older and more advanced? Yet one thing united everyone. Humanity had to respond. After long discussion, it was decided that a small group of representatives would speak to the Concord. Not to accept or reject anything yet, but simply to hold a conversation. Every country agreed on this approach. It was safe. It was reasonable. It was the only thing that made sense. A message was prepared carefully, using simple language and symbols that matched those used by the Concord. The plan was to transmit the message through the same open channels the fleet had used. When the moment came, the world watched live. The message was sent, a greeting, a peaceful acknowledgement, and a request for dialogue. Seconds passed. Then a minute. Then another minute. People held their breath in living rooms, offices, and classrooms. The Concord remained silent, their ships glowing faintly in the dark sky. Finally, The response arrived. The fleet sent down a beam of soft blue light, not toward cities, not toward military bases, but toward a large open area far from any population. It formed a steady pillar of light, a signal that the representatives would be welcome to speak face dash to dash face dot in that moment. The realization hit everyone at once. Humanity was stepping into the unknown. A door had opened that no one could close again. Life on Earth had changed forever, and nothing would ever be the same. The world watched, curious and fearful, not knowing that this first contact would lead to one of the most unexpected decisions in human history. The next morning, the world woke up with a strange mix of excitement and nervousness. People everywhere opened their eyes, hoping that everything that happened the previous night was not just a dream or a misunderstanding. But the sky proved it was real. The faint shapes of the alien ships were still visible far above the atmosphere, glowing lightly like distant lanterns. They were not threatening. They were not moving closer. They were simply waiting, patient and silent. As if respecting the time, humans needed to process everything. International news channels kept repeating the same update. Earth had received a peaceful invitation to talk. It was not a demand. It was not an order. It was an offer. And now humanity had to respond. Inside government buildings, people moved quickly through long hallways carrying documents, data charts, and communication reports. No one was walking slowly. Everyone understood that the next steps would shape the future of the entire planet. Meetings began early in the morning and stretched endlessly. Representatives from every region spoke with tired but alert expressions, trying to understand the best way forward. Outside those buildings, people gathered in public squares, parks, and sidewalks. Some held small glowing devices, pointing them at the sky to record the strange sight. Others sat quietly, thinking about what this meant for them, for their children, and for the world. A few debated in low voices about whether joining a group of alien civilizations was safe or risky. Some imagined the possibilities: shared knowledge, cures for diseases, new energy sources, and peaceful travel between stars. Others feared losing independence, traditions, or cultural identity. But no matter what people felt, almost everyone agreed on one thing: Earth could not ignore the offer. The visitors had come this far, shown no harm, and waited calmly. They deserved at least a conversation. By midday, a decision was reached. A carefully selected group of individual scientists, diplomats, cultural experts, and peace officers would travel to the location where the blue pillar of light touched the ground. They would not go armed. They would not bring any threatening equipment. The idea was simple: show trust, but stay cautious. The journey to the site became a global event. Live news coverage showed vehicles traveling across open land toward the glowing column. Millions watched with their hearts beating fast. It felt like watching history unfold in real time, something people would tell future generations about. When the group reached the site, they stepped out and approached the pillar with slow, careful steps. The blue light was gentle, almost calming, like a soft beam of sunlight filtered through water. There was no heat, no pressure, nothing harmful. It simply shimmered, waiting for them. As they moved closer, the light brightened slightly. Not enough to blind them, but enough to signal that their presence had been acknowledged. Then something unexpected happened. The pillar widened slowly, forming a shape like a doorway made entirely of light. The group hesitated, exchanging looks. This was the moment. Stepping through would mean leaving Earth's comfort zone for the first time in history. With steady breaths, they stepped inside. Instantly, they felt a shift, not painful, not frightening, but strange, as if space itself folded gently around them. When their vision cleared, they found themselves standing in a calm, spacious environment that did not feel like the inside of a ship, but also not like any building on Earth. The walls were smooth, flowing structures glimmering with soft silver tones. The air felt fresh, almost perfect, with a light scent they could not identify. Not floral, not metallic something new. At the far end of the room, forms began to appear. Not walking forward, not rising from the ground, they simply faded into visibility, as if stepping from one layer of space into another. These were the representatives of the Galactic Concord. They were tall, elegant beings with smooth, light, reflective surfaces. Not frightening, not monstrous. Their shapes felt peaceful, almost artistic, with gentle motions that suggested kindness. They did not have sharp features. Their presence was calming, like meeting wise travelers who had spent generations journeying through the stars. One of them stepped forward. When it spoke, its voice sounded like the same voice that delivered the message earlier, calm, warm, and understandable in every language. It welcomed the humans, thanking them for their courage and curiosity. The humans responded politely, expressing that Earth wished to learn more before making any decisions. They asked questions, starting with simple ones. Why reach out now? How long had they been watching humanity? What was the true purpose of the alliance? The Concord representatives answered carefully and respectfully. They explained that the alliance existed to connect civilizations peacefully, allowing them to share knowledge and learn from one another. They said humanity had reached a stage where communication was finally possible, not just because of technology, but because of emotional maturity and social growth. According to them, humanity had shown qualities that were rare: creativity under pressure, unity in the face of crisis, and an unusual capacity to imagine futures beyond survival. The humans listened with interest, but also with caution. They asked if joining the alliance meant losing independence. The Concord representatives explained that while the alliance encouraged cooperation, certain shared policies and cultural guidelines existed to avoid conflict between civilizations. They reassured that no species was forced to abandon its identity, but they did expect members to follow alliance principles designed for harmony. That word harmony made some humans uneasy. Harmony sounded beautiful, but it also sounded like a rule that might be interpreted in many ways. Sensing hesitation, the Concord representatives shifted the conversation. They projected a series of images into the air-floating holograms showing peaceful star systems, interstellar research centers, and scenes of different species working together. They showed advanced technologies that could solve countless human problems, clean energy sources that produced no waste, medical advancements that eliminated diseases that had troubled humans for centuries, transportation methods that allowed travel between planets in hours instead of years. The humans were amazed. Some of them felt emotional seeing what humanity could become with such help. They imagined a world without hunger, without pollution, without fear of resource shortages. A world where space exploration was not a dream, but an everyday activity. But another question soon followed. What was expected in return? The Concord representatives paused slightly before answering. They explained that members of the alliance shared their knowledge, resources, and progress. In exchange, they also contributed what they could: creativity, new ideas, scientific discoveries, cultural understanding. The alliance believed every civilization had something unique to offer. Then they explained something more serious. Alliance members were required to keep transparency in certain areas, especially military and resource activities, to ensure trust between civilizations. They also encouraged cultural alignment, a phrase the humans noted carefully. Cultural alignment meant reducing behaviors that might cause conflict with other species, such as aggression, territorial competition, or extreme nationalism. The humans exchanged thoughtful looks. These requirements were not unreasonable, but they were not simple either. Earth was diverse, divided, and full of different beliefs and perspectives. The idea of aligning cultures across the entire world sounded almost impossible. Still, the meeting continued smoothly, with both sides showing respect and curiosity. The Concord representatives invited Earth's group to observe more of their technology and ask additional questions. They offered small demonstrations of harmless inventions, floating devices that carried information, surfaces that changed shapes with a touch, energy crystals that glowed brightly without any heat. Hours passed without anyone realizing it. It felt like exploring a dream world where everything was advanced yet gentle, powerful yet peaceful. But beneath the excitement, doubts grew, quiet doubts that each human kept inside. Was the alliance truly as harmonious as it appeared? If every civilization was expected to follow certain rules, did that mean individuality slowly faded over time? Was peace maintained naturally or through subtle pressure? The Concord representatives did not seem threatening. In fact, they were welcoming and patient. But sometimes their answers felt too perfect, too polished, as if there were things left unsaid. When the meeting ended, the blue light returned, signaling it was time to go back. The humans thanked the Concord representatives, who bowed gracefully before fading out of view the same way they had appeared. Back on Earth, people waited anxiously as the group stepped out of the pillar of light. News reporters rushed forward, asking questions. Officials tried to keep everyone calm while escorting the group to a secure location for debriefing. Inside that room, the group shared everything they had seen, felt, and learned. Some described the Concord as peaceful and wise. Others expressed concern about the expectations tied to the alliance. Everyone agreed on one thing. The offer was enormous, life-changing, and not something to accept quickly. As night returned, the alien fleet remained in the sky, glowing softly like patient guardians waiting for an answer. Humanity now had the details of the offer, but also new doubts, new questions, and a quiet truth forming in the minds of many. Joining the alliance might bring wonders, Boo. After the first meeting with the Galactic Concord, the world entered a strange period of silence mixed with restless thinking. People were back to their daily routines, but their minds were somewhere else entirely. No matter where one went, schools, markets, offices, parks, every conversation sooner or later returned to the same question. Should humanity join the alliance or not? Some people were filled with hope. They imagined a future where Earth had clean energy, advanced medicine, and peaceful contact with other civilizations. They talked about traveling to other planets, learning new things, and seeing new worlds. For many, the idea felt like a dream finally coming true, but others were unsure. Something about the proposal felt too big, too fast. There were still many unanswered questions. People wondered what cultural alignment really meant. Would Earth have to change its traditions? Would people still be free to live as they wanted? Would the alliance expect everyone to think the same way? The more people thought about it, the harder it became to ignore the feeling that the offer carried hidden responsibilities. Meanwhile, inside government buildings and research centers across the world, experts were working day and night. Every detail from the first meeting was recorded, studied, and discussed repeatedly. Scientists examined the small demonstrations of technology the Concord had shown. Diplomats studied the words used by the aliens. Cultural scholars tried to understand what harmony principles might actually look like in everyday life. Most of the concerns kept circling back to the same few points. One of the biggest was autonomy. Would humanity still control its own choices? Or would the Concord expect Earth to follow strict rules that might slowly reshape society? Another worry was the requirement for military transparency. Many countries had long histories of not sharing certain information with others. If they joined the alliance, they would have to reveal things they had kept secret for decades. For some leaders, this was extremely difficult to accept. And then there was the issue of cultural identity. The Concord representatives had said that civilizations could keep their traditions, but avoid behaviors that lead to conflict. On the surface, this sounded reasonable. But who would decide what counted as behavior that leads to conflict? Would the Alliance judge Earth's music, films, beliefs, or ways of life? Or would they simply expect humanity to adjust naturally over time? Every time one question was answered, two new questions appeared. While this global thinking continued, the fleet remained in the sky. Their soft glow had almost become a normal part of the horizon. People began calling them the lights, talking about them as casually as talking about the moon. But inside scientific centers, experts knew those lights represented a decision far bigger than anything Earth had ever faced. Across social media, debates grew stronger. Some people urged acceptance. They said this was a historic chance, something generations had dreamed about. They argued that turning down an offer from the first peaceful advanced civilization Earth had ever met would be foolish. Others responded with caution. They reminded people that peace did not always mean freedom. They warned that powerful groups often had conditions hidden behind friendly words. They pointed out that humanity had only seen carefully selected parts of the Concord. Perhaps there were parts the Alliance preferred not to reveal. As days passed, many governments set up panels where citizens could share opinions. These discussions were broadcast live. People from all backgrounds spoke: farmers, teachers, scientists, shop owners, artists, students. Everyone had something to say. Some spoke with excitement, others with fear, and some simply expressed confusion about what the right choice might be. In one discussion, a scientist explained that joining the Alliance could solve many global problems instantly. They talked about the energy crystals that the Concord had shown, which could power entire cities without producing any pollution. They talked about medical technology that could eliminate diseases. They talked about the possibility of learning knowledge that humanity had not even imagined yet. But another speaker, an expert in social behavior, raised concerns. They said that adopting advanced technology from a much older civilization might cause humanity to skip its natural growth. They explained that development is not just about technology. It is about learning from struggles, mistakes, and achievements. If Earth received everything too easily, perhaps it would lose something important, something that made humanity unique. This idea resonated with many people. It reminded them that progress is not only about reaching a goal, but also about the journey. A few days later, an even more important piece of information surfaced. A group of historians and analysts studied past events involving other civilizations the Concord had welcomed. They found records, patterns, stories, and old archives from distant star systems. The information wasn't negative, but it was revealing. It showed that most civilizations who joined the Alliance did indeed become peaceful, advanced, and connected. But over time, their cultures became more similar to each other. Unique traditions slowly faded. Local languages were replaced with common ones. Distinct styles of art, music, and storytelling transformed. Nothing harmful happened, just gradual changes. Like small waves that shape a stone without breaking it. To some experts, this was a natural outcome. When different groups share space and knowledge, it is normal for cultures to blend. But others saw it differently. They believed humanity's diversity was one of its greatest strengths. Losing that, even slowly, felt like losing something priceless. These findings were shared privately with world leaders, who listened silently as they read through the reports. Some leaned back in their chairs, thinking hard. Others rubbed their eyes, knowing the decision would only get harder from this point on. The next turning point came when a small group of experts analyzed the Alliance Treaty more deeply. They discovered certain sections that had not been obvious before. These sections did not mention force, but they did mention compliance expectations. According to their analysis, If Earth joined and later disagreed with alliance regulations, there was no clear way to leave. The treaty had no exit plan. This discovery created a sense of unease. Some advisors insisted it was only a misunderstanding, that maybe those terms were simply lost in translation. Others felt certain that the Concord purposely avoided including an exit clause. They argued that once a civilization joined, it became part of the alliance permanently. This led to one of the most intense meetings on Earth. Leaders spoke passionately, asking whether humanity was ready to commit forever. Was the planet prepared to change its systems, habits, and structures for something new and unknown? After days of debate, the decision was made to hold another meeting with the Concord. This time, the human representatives asked clearer, more direct questions. They asked whether Earth would ever be allowed to leave the alliance. The Concord representatives paused before answering. Their response was gentle but firm. Civilizations rarely wished to leave. So the alliance had never created a separation process. That answer worried the humans deeply. They also asked whether the alliance ever encouraged or requested changes in culture. The Concord replied that gentle guidance was sometimes offered when certain practices created potential conflict with other member civilizations. Phrase gentle guidance became the center of global discussion. The representatives returned to Earth with heavy expressions. They shared everything with the officials waiting for them. The room felt heavier than usual, as if everyone inside sensed the decision ahead was not simply important, but historical. Over the next several days, late-night meetings became normal. Some leaders strongly supported joining, saying Earth needed help. Others argued that joining might solve today's problems, but create bigger issues for the future. Many wanted more time to think, but the Concord fleet continued waiting quietly. Then something unexpected happened. People around the world began holding gatherings, not protests, not celebrations, just calm, thoughtful gatherings. In parks, beaches, rooftops, and open fields, people sat together watching the glowing ships. They talked honestly about what they valued most about being human. Not technology, not power, not wealth, but emotions. Creativity, mistakes, growth, freedom, diversity, and the feeling of learning together. The gatherings spread everywhere, creating a quiet unity that surprised even world leaders. Humanity was not choosing out of fear or excitement anymore. People were beginning to understand what truly mattered. In one late-night meeting, a global representative summed it up simply. The offer is beautiful, but beauty alone is not enough. We must stay true to who we are. When dawn finally came, the leaders of Earth realized they had reached a turning point. The evidence, the concerns, and the voices of billions all pointed to one truth. The decision could not be made lightly. And for the first time, they considered seriously the possibility that humanity might have to decline. The fleet still hovered above, patient and silent, waiting for an answer. But now, the world below had changed. People no longer looked up with pure excitement or pure fear. They looked up with understanding. They knew what was at stake. They knew what might be lost. And they knew that the next step would define humanity for generations to come. The doubts were growing stronger. And soon, those doubts would turn into... As the days passed, the weight of the decision grew heavier. The world could feel it. Even children sensed that adults were quieter than usual. Conversations in homes, offices, and outdoor spaces felt slower, more thoughtful. The glowing fleet in the sky had become a constant reminder that humanity stood on the edge of something huge, something that could change everything forever. World leaders had listened to experts, debated for hours, and reviewed every detail of the Concord's offer. They had examined the benefits and the risks. They had listened to the voices of everyday people. And still, the answer wasn't clear. This was not a small agreement between nations. This was a choice that would affect humanity for thousands of years. Late one evening, a meeting took place that would become one of the most important discussions in human history. Representatives from every region gathered in a large hall. The atmosphere inside felt almost unreal. The air was thick with uncertainty, and yet there was a strange sense of unity too. Everyone knew they were part of something far bigger than themselves. The meeting began quietly. One representative started speaking, explaining how humanity could gain so much from joining the Alliance Clean Energy. Scientific advancement, medical breakthroughs, and access to knowledge far beyond Earth's current understanding. They argued that rejecting the offer might be the biggest missed opportunity in history. A second representative responded calmly. They said that while the offer was beautiful, something about it didn't feel right. They spoke about freedom, the freedom to grow at humanity's own pace, the freedom to make mistakes and learn from them, the freedom to protect the uniqueness of Earth's cultures and traditions. They warned that once humanity joined, it might never be able to step back. More representatives began to speak. Some were hopeful. Some were concerned. Some were torn between the two sides. But one thing was clear. There was no easy answer. As the meeting continued late into the night, a feeling slowly spread across the room. It was not fear. It was clarity. Humanity did not want to give up control of its future. Not yet. Not this way. Not with so many unanswered questions. By sunrise, the representatives finally reached a conclusion. It was not a decision rushed by excitement or fear. It was a decision shaped by reflection, discussion, and a deep understanding of what it meant to be human. Humanity would decline the offer. The message would be delivered respectfully, without disrespect or anger. It would not be a goodbye. It would simply be a choice to stay independent. When the final decision was made, the room went silent. Not the silence of regret, but the silence that comes when people understand the importance of what they have agreed to. Some felt nervous. Others felt relieved. A few felt emotional. But everyone understood that this was the right step for the world at this moment. Once the message was prepared, the representatives stepped outside the building. The world was already awake, waiting. News reporters stood by with their cameras ready. People gathered in public places to hear the announcement. There was a kind of stillness in the air, like the moment before a storm, except this time the storm was not made of fear. It was made of anticipation. The representative chosen to speak stood behind a simple podium. No flags, no decorations, nothing fancy. This was not a moment to show power. This was a moment to show honesty. The representative spoke slowly, choosing every word with care. They explained that humanity was deeply honored by the offer, grateful for the respect shown by the Galactic Concord. They acknowledged the kindness, the patience, and the incredible possibilities the Alliance offered. Then, with calm confidence, they delivered the most unexpected words ever spoken to an alien civilization. Humanity respectfully declines the invitation to join the Alliance at this time. For a moment, the world held its breath. News reporters froze. People watching from homes and public spaces stared at screens without blinking. Even birds in the trees seemed unusually quiet. Then the representative continued, explaining that humanity wished to continue peaceful communication, learning, and friendship, but without becoming a full member. They emphasized the value of independence, growth, and cultural identity. They said humanity needed time to evolve naturally before making any commitments of such scale. When the speech ended, the world exploded into a mixture of emotions. Some people cheered, feeling proud that humanity chose to protect its freedom. Others felt worried, wondering if rejecting the offer might anger the visitors or close the door to future opportunities. Some were simply shocked, but high above in the sky, the fleet remained calm. All eyes turned upward as the ships began to shift their positions slightly. Not aggressively, not threateningly, The soft lights grew brighter for a few moments, as if the fleet was reacting to the message. Then, without warning, a signal appeared in the sky again, similar to the first one humanity had seen during initial contact. This time, the colors moved slowly, forming calm, graceful patterns. It felt like a response, not from anger, but from understanding. A calm voice began to speak through global communication networks. It was the same voice the world had heard before. It thanked humanity for the honesty of its decision. It stated that the Concord respected Earth's choice and that no harm or pressure would follow. The voice explained that the Alliance valued free will and that humanity's decision was unexpected but admirable. The message continued, saying the Concord would observe from afar and keep communication channels open in case Earth ever changed its mind. Then the final message came. Your journey is your own. Grow well. After the message ended, a gentle sound filled the air, almost like a soft musical tone. The ships began to reposition themselves slowly, forming a long arc across the upper sky. People watched, unsure whether the fleet was leaving for good or simply adjusting its distance dot in cities. Silence filled the streets as people tried to understand what had just happened. The decision had been made. Humanity had said no to the most advanced alliance it had ever known. In homes, families gathered around screens, talking quietly about what the future might hold. Some felt strong pride. Others felt a deep curiosity about what might happen next. But all of them felt the weight of the moment. Throughout the day, discussions happened everywhere. Some people wondered if this decision would shape the world positively. Others feared the unknown consequences. But the majority believed something important had been protected, something deeply rooted in what it meant to be human. Meanwhile, in secret rooms and research centers, advisors and scientists began planning what to do next. Declining the offer didn't mean stopping exploration. In fact, the decision inspired a new sense of purpose. Many leaders understood that if humanity chose to remain independent, then it had to grow stronger on its own terms. It had to develop its own technology, its own solutions, and its own path to the stars. As evening approached, people began gathering outdoors, looking up at the sky. The fleet glowed softly, still visible, but slightly farther away than before. Some people waved up at them, as if greeting old friends. Others watched quietly, wondering what the visitors thought of humanity now. In that moment, something unexpected happened across the world. A feeling of unity began to rise, not unity based on fear or pressure or shared struggle, but unity based on a choice everyone had a voice in. For the first time in a long while, humanity felt like one world, one family, deciding its destiny together. As night fell, the fleet remained visible, but they no longer felt like mysterious strangers. They felt like distant observers, curious, patient, and perhaps still hopeful that one day humanity might join them. But for now, Earth had chosen its path. A path of independence. A path of slow and natural growth. A path that came with uncertainty, but also with pride. What no one knew not yet was that this decision would change humanity in ways far deeper than anyone expected. The world had turned down a cosmic offer, and the universe had taken notice. And in the quiet space above Earth, the watching fleet began to wonder what kind of species humans would become. In the days after humanity declined the offer from the Galactic Concord, something unusual began to happen. At first, it was subtle, barely noticeable. People were still talking about the decision, still debating whether it was wise or risky. But underneath all the noise, a quiet shift was taking place. It started with scientists. Many of them felt a spark inside, a kind of motivation they hadn't felt in years. Earth had said no to advanced civilizations, but that didn't mean humanity should stop looking upward. So scientists went back to their labs with renewed energy. They wanted to learn more, build more, discover more. It was as if the universe had challenged them, and they accepted the challenge. Innovators, engineers, and students felt it too. People who once took technology for granted suddenly felt inspired to dream bigger. They wanted to prove that Earth could grow on its own, step by step, without relying completely on outside help. This wasn't about pride or arrogance. It was about responsibility. If humanity wanted to stay independent, then it had to earn that independence. Governments began meeting again, this time with a very different tone. Instead of fear or worry, the meetings were filled with ideas. People proposed new research programs, new space missions, and new scientific collaborations between countries that once struggled to agree on even the simplest issues. The decision not to join the alliance had created a strange kind of harmony. For the first time in a long time, humanity was working together, not because of pressure, but because everyone wanted the same thing: progress across the world. Citizens followed these developments with growing excitement. Social media filled with discussions about the future, what humanity could achieve, how far it could go, and what kind of world people wanted to build. Young people especially felt a new sense of purpose. Many dreamed of becoming scientists, explorers, or researchers. Schools reported a surprising increase in students interested in space, physics, engineering, and environmental science. But while Earth was buzzing with energy, the fleet in the sky remained silent. The glowing ships still hovered at a steady distance, as if observing quietly. They didn't move closer or farther. They didn't send any new messages. They simply stayed there calm, distant, patient. Some people found comfort in their presence, believing the visitors were watching over Earth like friendly guardians. Others felt uneasy, wondering what the fleet was waiting for. One evening, something unexpected happened. Across several parts of the world, people noticed soft beams of light descending from the sky. They looked almost like searchlights, but they weren't scanning the ground. They formed slow, gentle patterns in the air, like a greeting. Scientists quickly began studying the lights, trying to understand their purpose. Some believed the lights were simple gestures of peace. Others thought it might be a form of communication more advanced than spoken language. The next morning, global communication channels received a short transmission from the fleet. It wasn't a long speech. It was simple and clear. The voice said the Concorde would remain nearby for a period of observation, not as rulers or overseers, but as witnesses to humanity's progress. They promised they would not interfere unless requested. The message ended with the same gentle tone as before, wishing Earth growth and clarity. After that, the fleet's activities returned to silence. Life on Earth moved forward. People resumed their routines, but everything felt slightly different. Conversations at workplaces and in homes were filled with wonder. Even simple moments, like looking up at the night sky, carried a deeper meaning. One afternoon, a group of researchers gathered at an observatory to analyze recent data. They had been monitoring slight energy shifts around the fleet. The readings were unusual, but not dangerous. The researchers thought the ships might be performing small adjustments or calibrations. But then one researcher noticed something more interesting. The fleet wasn't just sitting there. It was sending faint signals into deep space. They weren't directed toward Earth. They were aimed outward, toward distant regions of the galaxy. The researchers couldn't decode the signals, but they felt certain of one thing. The Concorde wasn't alone, and they were communicating with someone or something far away. That raised new questions. Were they updating their alliance about Earth's decision? Were they discussing humanity's progress? Or were they simply maintaining contact with their homeworlds? These questions spread quickly among scientists, sparking new theories and discussions. Some believed the Concorde might be informing other civilizations about Earth. Others suggested that the signals might be part of routine communication unrelated to Earth. No one knew for sure. Meanwhile, young people across the world began creating. Clubs, groups, and online communities focused on space exploration and global unity. Instead of dividing into different opinions, many people found common ground in the idea of building a better future. Teachers noticed students becoming more curious. Parents noticed children asking deeper questions about science and life. Artists also felt inspired. Painters created murals showing Earth standing proudly beneath the fleet. Writers composed stories about the future. Musicians made pieces filled with emotion and hope. Humanity was experiencing something rare: creativity, driven by possibility instead of fear. One clear night, a large crowd gathered at a coastal viewpoint known for stunning stargazing. Families sat on blankets. Children pointed at the sky. Couples held hands. The fleet glowed softly as usual. But that night, the sky felt different. The stars seemed brighter, as if they were encouraging humanity to keep looking up. Then, something remarkable happened. The largest ship in the fleet emitted a slow wave of light that rippled across the sky like a curtain of shimmering colors. It wasn't loud. It wasn't harsh. It was gentle, almost comforting. People gasped softly. Some smiled. A few even felt emotional. No one quite understood what it meant, but the moment felt peaceful, like a quiet promise that the universe still had much to offer. Scientists later called it a luminary display, though they admitted they had no idea how the effect was created. Some believed it was a symbolic gesture from the Concorde, maybe even a quiet way of saying they respected Earth's decision and still wished to maintain friendly contact. As days turned into weeks, a new global initiative began taking shape. It wasn't led by one country, it was a unified effort. Nations agreed to share resources, knowledge, and data more openly than ever before. They wanted to build a new generation of spacecraft, satellites, and research stations. Not because they wanted to compete with the Concorde, but because they wanted to grow stronger and wiser as a planet. Engineers sketched out new designs for ships capable of exploring deeper into space. Researchers worked on projects aimed at improving energy efficiency and environmental sustainability. Medical experts collaborated on new treatments, inspired by the idea of preparing humanity for long-term space travel. The movement wasn't perfect. There were disagreements, delays, and challenges. But what mattered most was that humanity wasn't standing still. It was moving forward with purpose. Amid all this progress, ordinary people continued living their lives, but with a new kind of hope. Conversations at dinner tables shifted from worries to dreams. People talked about future space missions, global unity, and the potential of exploring beyond the solar system. Even those who once felt disconnected from science found themselves curious about what the future might hold. One quiet morning, something subtle changed in the fleet. From Earth's surface, the ships looked exactly the same. But scientists analyzing their energy patterns noticed a slight shift. It wasn't dangerous or alarming. It was almost like someone in the fleet had taken a deep breath. The shift continued for several hours, then stopped. The fleet remained still afterward, but the change left scientists puzzled and excited. They wondered if the Concorde had begun preparing for something. Maybe a journey, maybe a new observation phase, or maybe a simple repositioning. Nothing happened immediately. Days passed, then weeks, and the fleet remained calm. But around the world, people began feeling a quiet expectation. They sensed that something new was approaching, something connected to the decision humanity had made. Some thought the Concorde might send a new message. Others believed the visitors might leave soon. Yet most people didn't feel fear. They simply felt curiosity. Humanity had taken a bold step. The universe was watching. And somewhere deep inside the fleet, the Concorde was preparing for the next chapter of this unexpected relationship. A relationship built not on dependence, but on mutual respect. What came next was would surprise everyone on Earth.